Riding an ambulance, Yumeko reflects on how unlucky she is for being ugly and fat. To make things worse, she's heartbroken because the man she loves is someone so beautiful and out of reach. As she slowly feels herself fading away, she hears the paramedics say they're almost at the hospital. However, Yumeko has already given up hope, wishing to be reincarnated so she can have a better life. After some time, Yumeko wakes up. Her parents are there, worried but relieved to finally see her awake. However, Yumeko doesn't recognize them or even herself. Her parents explain that she had attempted suicide but miraculously survived. Yumeko is shocked and confused, wondering why she would ever try to kill herself. Her father expresses relief that her face won't scar, which makes Yumeko curious. She asks for a mirror so she can see, but her mother tells her they don't keep mirrors because Yumeko hates them, then hands her a phone instead. Yumeko looks at her reflection on the phone screen and instead of disgust, she calls herself super cute, which shocks her parents. She compliments her flawless skin and puppy-like eyes while her parents watch in disbelief, stunned that their self-loathing daughter is finally happy with her appearance. But instead of sharing her joy, they panic and call the doctor, fearing Yumeko might be crazy. The doctor later explains that Yumeko is suffering from retrograde amnesia due to brain trauma and that personality shifts are common. Yumeko's mother worries that the neighbors might think they're strange, but her father and the doctor are simply thankful that Yumeko survived. Yumeko also feels grateful that all she lost was her memory. She spins around the room singing cheerfully, while her parents join her reluctantly. Holding her parents' hands, she tells them how happy she is to have them. When she finally returns home, Yumeko admires how cozy her messy room looks. But when she opens her wardrobe, she finds the clothes rather dull. She finds a cute shirt to try on but can't find a mirror to check how it looks on her. Remembering what her mother said, she begins piecing together why she might have wanted to die. She realizes she might find more clues through her phone and quickly turns it on to search for answers. When she looks at her photo gallery, Yumeko notices that she doesn't have a photo of herself. She spots a folder titled My Happy Place and curiously opens it. To her horror, the folder contains countless photos of a man she doesn't recognize. She realizes all the photos were taken in secret and begins to wonder if she used to be some kind of stalker. Just as the thought unsettles her, a knock sounds on her door. Her mother reminds her that their neighbors might start asking questions, so it's best if she returns to work soon. Curious, Yumeko asks how old she is. When she learns she's 24, she brightens up, thrilled by the idea of being an adult. Excited to discover what kind of life she led before, she cheerfully tells her mother that she'll go back to work tomorrow. The next day, Yumeko happily walks to her workplace, proudly wearing a cute outfit she found in her wardrobe. She realizes she's almost there and grins with excitement. On her way, she notices a park nearby and for some reason feels drawn to pass through it. Letting her feet guide her, she admires the scenery until she spots a man crouching behind some bushes, looking pale. Concerned, she approaches to ask if he's all right but freezes when she recognizes him as the man from her phone photos. Playing it safe, she asks if they've met before. The man shakes his head, and Yumeko realizes how creepy she must have been to secretly take pictures of a stranger. Pushing aside her embarrassment, she focuses on helping him. Yumeko rushes off and returns moments later with her hands cupped full of water since she couldn't find a vending machine. The man tries to politely refuse, but Yumeko insists, telling him that if he's unwell, he should rest instead of pushing himself. Yumeko tells him that taking a break can actually help, proudly declaring that she was recently on the verge of death, but thanks to a break, she is ready to face the world. As she speaks, she notices the dark circles under his eyes. She scolds him for not sleeping enough, saying he's wasting his pretty face. The man looks at her in surprise, then starts to chuckle, calling her funny. Flustered, Yumeko blushes at his smile and huffs that he must be fine since he has the energy to flirt. As she runs, she's shocked by how warm her face feels. Meanwhile, the man, Kisuke, is found by his subordinate. Finally arriving at her department, Yumeko proudly announces that she's back but is stunned when everyone just stares at her with blank expressions. She asks one of her office mates if anyone remembers her. The lady quickly replies that they do. It's just that everyone's in shock because she looks so different. Yumeko assumes it must be because she looks too beautiful today. Suddenly, an intimidating voice from behind asks if she survived. Without hesitation, she explains that she's lost her memory and will need everyone's help to adjust. The man introduces himself as her direct supervisor, Mizono, and instructs everyone to assist her however they can. Yumeko then notices she's been sweating, indicating she is nervous around Mizono. The workday begins and the lady from earlier takes her to a meeting. Yumeko decides she must have been a nuisance before, so she resolves to befriend her. She learns the lady's name is Saki. The meeting turns out to be about potato chips, which makes Yumeko unexpectedly excited. However, the rest of the team looks unenthusiastic, thinking the proposal is bound to get rejected. Yumeko wants to contribute but quickly realizes she has no idea what to say. She rummages through her bag and pulls out a small idea notebook. At first, she smiles, impressed by all the creative notes, until she flips a page and sees harsh comments where her old self insulted her for being fat. Her heart sinks, but she decides to live differently now. She raises her voice and suggests making powdered summer flavors like watermelon, ramune, and shaved ice to sprinkle on the potato chips. Two members immediately say it sounds disgusting, but Saki steps in, saying the idea could go viral online because of how unique it is. From his seat, Mizuno smiles faintly. Soon after, the meeting is adjourned since Yumiko was the only one with an idea. Yumiko stays behind, staring at her notebook. She feels bad that her old self struggled so much, but she's also grateful for all the creative ideas left behind. Determined to keep things positive, she adds a new page filled with encouraging words. Suddenly, her phone rings. A policeman is on the other line, causing Yumiko to panic, thinking they discovered the strange photos on her phone and now believe she's a stalker. But the officer tells her that they think her suicide attempt might actually be an attempted murder, so they want more information about what happened. Yumiko admits she's lost her memory and the call soon ends. At first, she thinks the idea is ridiculous, but then her imagination begins to run wild as she thinks the culprit might be Kisuke, or someone who is in love with her. Before her fantasies can spiral further, her stomach suddenly growls. Back in the department, Saki is surrounded by several male employees asking her to join them for lunch. As she contemplates who to go with, a few women glance at her with envy. Just then, Yumiko bursts in, rushing to Saki's side, thanking her for the support. The men immediately comment on how kind Saki is for helping out. Yumiko assumes the praise is directed at her, but when the men try to clarify, she refuses to listen. Grabbing Saki by the arm, she invites her to lunch, but the men protest, saying they asked first. Yumiko misunderstands again, thinking the boys are competing for her attention, and cheerfully tells them they're all welcome to join, completely unaware that it's Saki they're interested in. At lunch, Yumiko enthusiastically devours every dish on the table while the men watch in shock at her large appetite. She even starts helping herself to food from other plates. When one of them tries to joke that she's fat because of how much she eats, Yumiko confidently replies that she needs to eat plenty to maintain her beautiful proportions. Saki admits that when she eats too much, her face gets round. Yumiko assures her that girls actually become more attractive when they gain a little weight, but this only makes the men laugh harder, thinking she's just making excuses not to diet. After lunch, Yumiko feels drowsy, so Saki offers her some mints and explains which pressure points to pinch to stay alert. Yumiko glances around and notices how tidy Saki's desk is. Yumiko muses that in terms of beauty, they seem evenly matched. Saki agrees easily but points out that Yumiko's desk is a mess. Looking closer, Yumiko realizes her old self had filled the drawer with countless idea notebooks. Saki then asks what made her speak up during the meeting earlier. Yumiko proudly shows one of the notebooks, explaining that her old self had so many ideas but lacked the courage to share them. Saki flips through a few pages, her eyes widening as she reads. Yumiko smiles, saying her old self must have loved snacks and sweets, and that she wants those ideas to finally be heard. Before they can chat further, Mizuno calls out for Yumiko's attention. Mizuno informs Yumiko that the team has decided to move forward with her idea and tells her to prepare a pitch. Yumiko agrees, but she feels slightly uneasy around Mizuno, though she can't quite figure out why. He then instructs Saki to finish some documents, even giving her a compliment. However, Yumiko notices that Saki doesn't look happy. Later that evening, as Yumiko studies how to make a pitch, she decides she'll ask for Saki's help tomorrow. Her thoughts drift to Kisuke, wondering if she'll see him again. Realizing it's getting late, she remembers she still needs to buy clothes to impress her crush. She's certain her old self must have been in love with Kisuke, but never had the courage to approach him. Now, she feels confident that she can. The next morning, Yumiko strolls through the same park and eventually spots Kisuke again. They greet each other, and Yumiko fumbles to find a water bottle to offer him. Kisuke smiles and shows her that he brought one. They chat for a while, and she learns that Kisuke visits the park every morning before work because it holds special meaning for him. Yumiko agrees, saying she also finds the park important but admits she can't remember why. When she reveals she hit her head and now has amnesia, Kisuke looks shocked, saying he never would have guessed she came from a difficult past. Yumiko laughs it off, saying that life feels exciting now since everything seems new to her. Kisuke smiles warmly and tells her he'd like for them to be friends, hoping they'll see each other again. When Yumiko arrives at the office, she's still daydreaming about their conversation, only to realize she never asked for his name. Saki soon walks in and compliments Yumiko for looking cute. Yumiko is about to ask for her help, but Saki quickly declines, saying she's busy, and hurries off. Yumiko heads to the bathroom, quietly scolding herself for being selfish. While in the cubicle, she overhears a few girls gossiping, not just about her, but about Saki as well, calling Saki useless and claiming Saki is only kept around as office eye candy. That's enough to make Yumiko step in, though it takes her a moment to squeeze through the door, and she scolds the girls for speaking badly about Saki. She also reminds them that her own face and body were given to her by God, so there's no reason to be jealous. Instead, she encourages them to focus on their good qualities. Outside the bathroom, Saki overhears everything. Instead of feeling grateful, she feels irritated. A small part of her wishes Yumeko had just stayed gloomy and quiet. Back at her desk, Yumeko finally finishes the pitch and beams with satisfaction. But when she opens her drawer, she freezes since her notebooks are gone. As Yumeko searches frantically around her desk for her missing notebooks, Mizono approaches and reminds her that her pitch is scheduled for 4 p.m. Yumeko forces a smile, pretending everything is fine, but the moment he walks away, her composure breaks. Glancing at the clock, she sees it's already 11 a.m. Without her notebooks, she feels completely lost. She starts to wonder if someone might have stolen them. Strangely, that thought comforts her. To her, it makes sense that someone would want to take them. After all, she must be a genius. Snapping out of her daydream, she asks if anyone has seen 10 notebooks. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Saki hides the very notebooks Yumeko is looking for. Just as she finishes, Mizono walks in and asks if she can help Yumeko with her upcoming pitch, since it's her first one and she's still recovering from amnesia. Saki hesitates, then asks why he decided to go with Yumeko's idea in the first place. Mizono explains that the department desperately needs a hit, and Yumeko's unusual concept might be exactly what they need to turn things around. Saki asks if he even reviewed the ideas she submitted. Mizono confirms, saying he did, but they were too generic and wouldn't have impressed upper management. As she walks back to her desk, she overhears Yumeko and several co-workers talking. Yumeko has enlisted their help to find her missing notebooks, and the group begins speculating. Some think they were stolen, but a member of the planning team insists that no one in their department would stoop that low. Stealing another person's pitch would brand them as a bad co-worker. Saki freezes, guilt twisting in her chest. Unable to bear it, she dashes out of the office. Yumeko decides to proceed with the presentation without her notebooks, but struggles to organize her thoughts. She wants to ask Saki for help, but when she turns toward her desk, Saki's chair is still empty. Soon and others begin looking for Saki too, needing her assistance for various tasks. When they try calling her phone, she doesn't answer. Mizono asks if anyone has seen her, and Yumeko mentions that she did earlier in the morning, but Saki had seemed in a hurry. Mizono recalls their brief conversation as well, noting that Saki had looked unusually pale. When Yumeko asks if he said anything to upset her, Mizono admits that he told Saki her ideas were too generic to present. He then instructs everyone to stop worrying about Saki and focus on their work. Yumeko suddenly feels a wave of worry. She can't shake the thought that she owes Saki, who has always been kind to her. When a co-worker approaches to check on her, Yumeko abruptly stands and declares that she'll be back. She bolts out of the department to search for Saki. She checks every room, but Saki is nowhere to be found. Her feet eventually carry her outside the office, and a growing dread settles in her chest. Panting, Yumeko stops to catch her breath but refuses to give up. Her search leads her to a small park near the office. There on a bench, she spots Saki staring blankly ahead. Yumeko rushes toward her, out of breath and drenched in sweat. Yumeko manages to say that lunch break is already over and that the office feels lost without her, but Saki insists that's not true. She believes the office doesn't need her. Then, in a sharper tone, she accuses Yumeko of coming only to scold her. As she lashes out, the paper bag she's holding slips, spilling Yumeko's missing notebooks onto the ground. Saki braces herself for anger or disappointment, but instead, Yumeko smiles in relief, assuming Saki had simply found them for her. Saki scoffs and calls Yumeko an idiot. She admits that she was the one who stole the notebooks. When Yumeko gently asks why, Saki confesses that despite all her studying and effort, she feels defeated by Yumeko. She's been in the company for 2 years, yet none of her ideas have ever been approved. Yumeko, meanwhile, just returned and already has a project moving forward. Saki's voice cracks as she calls herself useless, good only for documentation, something anyone could do. She holds out the notebooks and says she can't return to work, but Yumeko grabs her hand firmly and tells her they should go back together because she needs Saki's help. Yumeko thanks her sincerely. Saki was the first to help her when she came back to the office after losing her memory. Her documents are always clean, detailed, and worthy of their chief's praise. That isn't something just anyone can do. Yumeko insists that while her own ideas might be good, she's just as amazed by Saki's hard work. Moved to tears, Saki begins to cry. As they walk back to the office hand in hand, she sniffles and tells Yumeko that her hands are surprisingly squishy like marshmallows. Once they return to the office, Mizono immediately scolds them for disappearing, but after a stern warning, he allows them to get back to work since there's only an hour left before the pitch. Yumeko and Saki exchange confident smiles, sure that they can still make it in time. Some co-workers try to get Saki's attention, but she brushes them off, saying that Yumiko's presentation takes top priority. She smiles sweetly and adds that from today onward, she will no longer be making coffee for anyone. Saki reassures Yumeko that she'll handle the pitch draft and tells her to focus on practicing her lines. Yumeko immediately begins rehearsing what to say as Saki's fingers fly across the keyboard. Saki finishes the draft in record time, prints out copies for everyone, and Yumeko delivers them to the meeting room. When everything is finally ready, the two look at what they've accomplished. Still, Saki reminds her that they can't celebrate until the pitch is approved. Clutching each other's hands, they wish for the best just as word comes that the executives are ready. People begin to file into the meeting room, and to Yumeko's surprise, she spots Keisuke among them. Saki leans over and whispers that he's the company's vice president. Startled, Yumeko tries to wave at him, but Keisuke doesn't react. A small pang of doubt hits her as she believes that the vice president is different from the man at the park. Keisuke politely bows to Mizono, thanking him for his time, but Mizono pointedly ignores him. Confused, Yumeko starts to ask why their boss is ignoring the vice president, but Saki quickly pulls her aside and signals her to stay quiet. The presentation begins soon after. Yumeko confidently introduces her concept of summer-flavored chips. She invites everyone to try the sample they've prepared, a bright blue Ramune-flavored chip meant to evoke summer refreshment. Keisuke is the first to try it. After a thoughtful chew, he says the chip isn't good enough as it lacks flavor and visual appeal. Saki and Mizono assume the idea has been rejected, but Yumeko suddenly agrees with Keisuke, delighted that only the sample failed, not the concept itself. She begins to enthusiastically praise herself for the breakthrough and eagerly explains how the final product can be improved. Yumeko manages to catch a glimpse of Keisuke chuckling before he quickly regains his serious expression. He nods and agrees with her assessment, stating that the concept has promise but needs improvement. He gives them 2 days to make the necessary adjustments. That evening, the girls celebrate over yakitori. Yumeko wonders if this kind of place is okay for Saki, assuming she's the type who'd prefer a fancy bar. But Saki reassures her with a laugh, saying she loves yakitori, and celebrating with Yumeko makes it even better. Yumeko beams, ready to fully enjoy their small victory, but Saki quickly reminds her that passing the pitch doesn't mean they're done. They still have a lot of work ahead. Their conversation shifts to Keisuke, and Yumeko points out how young he seems to be for a vice president. When she asks if he's the president's son, Saki shares what she knows. She reveals that Keisuke was originally part of the planning department and used to get along well with Mizono, but after Keisuke's promotion, Mizono suddenly became distant. Saki then explains that Keisuke isn't actually related to the president. The president does have a daughter who happens to be married to Mizono. According to Saki, it's rumored that Mizono was expected to become vice president, but the position was given to Keisuke instead. Then she adds a juicier rumor that Mizono's wife is having an affair with Keisuke and used her influence to secure the position for him. Saki admits it's just office gossip, though she's fairly certain Mizono and his wife are already separated. Yumeko finds it hard to believe since Keisuke seemed far too kind to be part of something so scandalous. But then she remembers how cold he'd been earlier in the day, and uncertainty creeps in. They both decide to give it their all to make the next presentation perfect. The next morning, Yumeko heads to the park where she usually sees Keisuke, but he isn't there. Disappointed, she walks to the office, only to spot him leaving the planning department. When she greets her co-workers, everyone stares at her with a strange, horrified look. They explain that Keisuke had just stopped by and left her an ice case. Yumeko dreamily wonders if it's a little gesture to cheer her on, but her co-workers are suspicious. As the group debates over what could be inside the cooler, they gather around Yumeko, eager to see her open it. To their surprise, it's filled with bottles of Ramune. Their tension eases, and they begin to think that maybe Keisuke isn't such a cold person after all. Still, Saki can't relax. She reminds everyone that their pitch needs to be redone, and the deadline is tomorrow. She sighs, wishing they were given a hint instead of a refreshment. One coworker points out that as members of the planning department, finding solutions is their job anyway. He decides to open a bottle for himself, but as soon as he pushes the ball in, the drink fizzes out, spilling its sparkling liquid onto the floor. Yumeko stares at the shimmering puddle, and an idea strikes her. She grabs Saki's hand and tells her to follow. Together, they rush to the food development research room, ready to test Yumeko's new concept. They work through the day and deep into the night, mixing, testing, and tasting. By dawn, their exhaustion turns into pride as they stare at their final result, chips that look and taste completely different from their first attempt. They high-five, smiling through their fatigue, proud of what they created after more than 24 hours of non-stop work. When the meeting begins, each executive is served a small bowl of the new chips. Keisuke takes the first bite, and this time his eyes widen in surprise as the chip fizzes and pops in his mouth. Yumeko eagerly explains that they added crushed carbonated candy to enhance the Ramune flavor and create a refreshing popping sensation. Keisuke leans toward the president and quietly admits that while the product is risky, it might be something worth taking a chance on. With the final decision left to him, Keisuke approves the product. Saki and Yumeko hug, barely able to contain their excitement. As Keisuke is about to leave the building, Yumiko calls out to him. He gestures for his assistant to go ahead and stays behind. He apologizes for missing her at the park the previous morning, explaining that he had been out buying ramune and lost track of time. He adds that, strangely enough, he didn't feel his usual wave of anxiety while searching for the drink, and he thanks her for that. Yumiko starts to thank him for the hint, but Keisuke shakes his head, saying that it's he who owes her. Her optimism makes him want to root for her success. He bids her farewell, promising to meet her at the park as usual. Once he's out of sight, Yumiko can't help but celebrate, relieved that Keisuke truly is a kind person. She convinces herself there's no way he could be involved in any affair. Feeling her heart race, she realizes she wants to know everything about him because she's certain she's in love. Suddenly, a mysterious man calls out to her, catching her by surprise. Motoki introduces himself as a detective from the police station, explaining that he came because Yumiko hadn't shown up for further questioning as she promised. Yumiko recalls the phone call and apologizes. When she asks if Motoki was the one who called, he says it was actually his subordinate. Right on cue, Shunzaburo bursts into the building, announcing that he was the one who made the call. Realizing they're drawing attention, Motoki suggests moving the discussion to a nearby cafe. At the cafe, Motoki tells Yumiko they now suspect her case might have been an attempted murder. He describes it as deep-rooted malice, which Yumiko mishears as deep-fried lotus root, making her suddenly hungry. Shunzaburo clarifies that someone might genuinely hate her. He recaps what they know and informs her that the incident took place around 4 p.m. in an abandoned hotel unrelated to her home or work. The location was remote and there were no witnesses. They ask about the people in her life, noting that records show she has no close friends or romantic partners. When questioned about the day of the incident, Yumiko explains that she remembers nothing because of her amnesia. Motoki then asks if she has any notes or clues from her past, prompting Yumiko to pull out one of her old idea notebooks. She hands it to him, saying it proves she used to love sweets. As Motoki flips through the notebook, he notices a disturbing spread filled with hateful remarks. When he asks about it, Yumiko explains that the left page was written by her past self, who struggled with self-loathing, while the right page reflects her present self trying to move forward. When asked about her coworkers, Yumiko describes Saki as a friendly rival she often drinks with, Yutaka as a cheerful office mate, and Masakiko as someone who always looks after her. She adds that her chief, Hiroki Mizono, is standoffish but supportive of her ideas. Finally, Motoki brings up Keisuke, noting that he's the company's vice president. Yumiko insists they only talked about work after her presentation. However, Motoki reveals that the police recently received information suggesting Keisuke is having an affair with Hiroki's wife. He wonders aloud if Keisuke might be the type to make advances on other women, including Yumiko. Yumiko immediately denies the accusation, saying she doesn't believe the rumor and insists that Keisuke is a good man. With a proud smile, she adds that it's only natural he might make a pass at her since she's the ideal woman. Motoki sighs and calls her naive, reminding her that not everyone can be as good as she thinks. He points out that Saki might be using her to look better. Hiroki could have done something at work that cost him his position and his wife, and the rest of her coworkers might act differently when she isn't around. Yumiko grows defensive, asking why he's being so mean. Motoki calmly replies that it's not cruelty, it's just common sense not to take people at face value. Frustrated, Yumiko insists that her office mates are all good people and storms out of the cafe. Motoki runs after her, calling out that she forgot her notebook. When he catches up, he asks if she was joking about being the ideal woman. To his surprise, Yumiko is completely serious. Motoki chuckles and cruelly calls her crazy, saying she's objectively overweight and far from beautiful. He adds that her past self was probably more self-aware. Humiliated and angry, Yumiko decides she hates Motoki. She grabs her notebook and storms back to her office, wondering bitterly if his hobby is making fun of pretty girls. As she enters her department, she's greeted with a shower of poppers. Her office mates cheer, telling her they're holding a small celebration for their first product in years. Saki beams and leads her to a table of snacks. Smiling warmly, Yumiko feels reassured that her coworkers are good people. Yutaka offers to cut a pear with his knife, but the sight of the blade makes Yumiko go pale as a buried memory flickers to life, one filled with self-hatred and pain. Saki notices her reaction and asks if she's okay. Yumiko forces a smile and insists she's fine. Meanwhile, while walking back to the police station, Shunzaburo laments their lack of progress. His disappointment turns to shock when he notices Motoki scrolling through Yumiko's phone. He had apparently taken it without her noticing and is already sifting through her data. Motoki finds a folder filled with photos of Keisuke, all taken secretly from a distance. The discovery makes him doubt Yumiko's claims of amnesia, and he concludes that they should continue monitoring her closely. Tossing the phone to Shunzaburo, he orders him to turn it in as a lost phone at the front desk and keep an eye on Keisuke, while he himself will focus on following Yumiko. At home, Yumeko searches every corner of her room, growing increasingly anxious when she can't find her phone. She wonders if she misplaced it or if someone had stolen it. Her thoughts briefly drift to Saki, remembering a time when Saki had taken her things before. But she quickly shakes the thought away, slapping her cheeks to focus. Saki wouldn't do that now since they're on good terms. She blames Motoki for putting strange ideas in her head. She tries convincing herself that she left the phone at work and can retrieve it. She rushes to the office to look for it but finds nothing. By morning, exhausted and worried, she sits alone in the park, deep in thought. Keisuke spots her and greets her warmly, asking how the product planning department is doing. Yumeko brightens, telling him that everyone is kind and that things are going well. She even shares how they recently had a small celebration. Keisuke smiles, saying that her team acts that way because of her. He tells her she has a certain power to inspire people and that he finds himself looking forward to what she can accomplish. Yumeko blushes, admitting that he inspires her just as much. Talking with him fills her with courage. For the first time, she feels ready to face her past, even if it frightens her. From a distance, Motoki watches the two with narrowed eyes. Their body language seems far too familiar for a simple work relationship. Shunzaburo arrives and hands Motoki a folder. Inside are surveillance photos of Keisuke having dinner the previous night with Hiroki's wife, Rikako, at an upscale hotel. Meanwhile, Keisuke decides it's time to head to work and finishes his drink. Yumeko compliments his discipline and Keisuke chuckles, saying that staying hydrated has become a habit and that it's thanks to her that he's been able to breathe easier these days. Yumeko asks about his episodes and Keisuke admits that he used to have them a lot. He explains that although people at work see him as cold and composed, the truth is that he struggles deeply with pressure. Talking to Yumeko helps him feel lighter and at ease. Yumeko excitedly tells him that he can always talk to her, describing herself as the sun that brightens everyone's day. Keisuke laughs genuinely, admitting that it's that kind of energy that makes him like her so much. After parting ways, Yumeko silently vows to do her best to make sure he never feels pressure again. At the office, she tells Saki about her missing phone. Saki offers to call it, reasoning that if it's somewhere in the office, they'll hear it ring. Yumeko feels guilty for ever suspecting Saki and hugs her out of relief. A moment later, Yumeko receives a call from the front desk informing her that she has a guest waiting. When she goes downstairs, she finds Shunzaburo waiting for her. She looks around for Motoki, but Shunzaburo says that he came alone. He hands her her phone and guides her to the park, admitting that they were the ones who took it. Yumeko grows angry, but Shunzaburo quickly explains that Motoki has a habit of overstepping boundaries when it comes to solving a case. He adds that Motoki suspects her of lying about her amnesia. When he mentions the album full of Keisuke's photos, Yumeko immediately worries that she might be arrested for taking pictures without permission. She denies being the one who took them, then corrects herself by saying that it was probably her past self, not her current one. Shunzaburo reassures her that he isn't there to arrest her and just wants to hear the truth. Yumeko admits that she doesn't know why her old self would have taken such photos, saying that if it were her now, she would have done it openly because of how beautiful she looks. Shunzaburo then takes out a photo and asks if she knows the girl in it. Yumeko studies it carefully but says that she doesn't recognize anyone at Gloomy in the office. Shunzaburo tells her that it's actually a photo of her. Yumeko chuckles and says that there's no way it could be her because of the frown and how lifeless her eyes look. He insists that it really is her, so Yumeko takes the photo to get a better look, still finding it difficult to believe that the picture is her old self. As Shunzaburo prepares to leave, he accidentally drops his documents on Keisuke. Yumeko catches a glimpse of one of the photos and sees Keisuke having dinner with Rikako. Something about Rikako's features feels strangely familiar to her. When she asks why they have photos of Keisuke, Shunzaburo admits that he was ordered to follow him since he seemed unusually close to her. Yumeko asks if Keisuke is a suspect in her attempted murder case, and when Shunzaburo confirms it, she immediately defends him. She insists that Keisuke is one of the kindest, most genuine people she knows, someone incapable of hurting anyone. She tells Shunzaburo to tell Motoki to stop suspecting Keisuke and storms off angrily. Shunzaburo, shaken by her outbursts, speaks into a small device hidden on his clothes, reporting to Motoki that Yumeko is mad. Motoki responds that it's fine and he heard everything perfectly. Meanwhile, Yumeko heads to the restroom to calm down. She stares at her reflection in the mirror and recalls her mother's words. The longer she looks, the more her reflection seems to shift. Fear grits her chest. She nearly smashes the mirror in panic but stops her hand just in time. Bits of her memory begin to resurface, making her feel as though her old self is slowly returning. Terrified of becoming that person again, she runs out of the restroom and rushes toward the exit of the building, unaware that she dashed past Keisuke. Recognizing her, Keisuke tells his assistant to buy him some time while he goes after her. Yumeko flees to the park just as the sky starts to drizzle. Keisuke eventually catches up to her and she tells him to stay away, terrified that she's turning back into her old self and that her eyes are beginning to lose their light. He assures her that she's fine as she looks the same as always. They sit together as she confides that she's afraid of remembering her past self, saying that the old photo brought back her fear of who she used to be. Keisuke admits that he had also seen an old photo of her when he was notified about an employee's accident. He hadn't realized it was her until the day of the product pitch. He tells Yumeko that to him, the person she is now feels like her true self, and that even if she regains her memories, this version of her will remain. He assures her that their friendship won't change. Yumeko's eyes fill with tears, but before she can respond, Keisuke's assistant comes running to remind him about an important meeting. Keisuke's expression hardens as he stands, his tone turning cold again as he tells Yumeko that he's looking forward to the product launch. Yumeko watches him leave and quietly vows to clear his name. She realizes that regaining her memory might be the key to discovering who the real culprit is. Looking down at her reflection in a small puddle, she smiles faintly, comforted by that thought. Elsewhere, Rikako hides inside an apartment, trembling as the doorbell rings repeatedly. She calls for Keisuke's help, but he isn't there. Desperate, she clutches her phone and calls someone. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes every week.